So in this video, I'm going to review 3 popular horse racing books. Ultimately, we're going to ask one main question, which is, of course, are they worth your time to read in full whilst you're sat at home and you've got more time on your hands than usual? Also, if you watch the video in full, there'll be a question throughout, a sporting question. If you can answer that question correctly, the first person to do so in the comments below, I'll bang all 3 of these in the post to you immediately. We've broken down the review itself into several main areas, which we'll cover on each individual book step by step. First of all, brief overview what the book's about, just in case you're unaware. Let you know through a few pros and cons to the book, what we thought of it, how credible the book is and its sources are, and also if there's strategy-based information inside the book that will be of use potentially for you going forward in the future. If you don't win the giveaway, then also there are links to each individual book where you can sort of peruse a little bit further in the description down below, so give it a click and check them out. So first of all, on to the first book. The first one we're going to cover is Nick Townsend's account of Barney Curley and the greatest coup in horse racing history, The Sure Thing. So there's the cover there, just in case you haven't seen that before. And basically, Barney Curley, if you don't know about him, is an owner, trainer of horses over a period of time, and he landed 2 exceptionally large gambles. The exact figures are not known specifically. Some bookmakers went bust in the process. Yellow Sam betting coup was one of them that you may have heard of. It's probably one of the most famous betting coups in all time. You'll find that on Wikipedia. In fact, we'll probably bang that link in the description down below too. And very successfully he took a lot of money off a lot of bookmakers very quickly by racing a horse that he knew was of far better quality than the general public did. So it's that old adage of, you know, inside information. In terms of credibility, it's well documented that Barney Curley here is a successful bettor. He's also a successful trainer. I can vouch myself for having seen his runners on the betting exchanges when piles of money just piles into the market. You know, Barney Curley runners either dive all the way in, or if there's no money for them, then they drift out like a barge, or they did historically anyway. It's an enthralling story. There's a lot of ups and downs, bit of a roller coaster. It's very interesting and entertaining. In my opinion, it's definitely worth reading. In terms of strategy information, there's not really a lot in there. I think really the strategy with Barney Curley is inside information, making sure that horse that he knows about, that he's going to bet on, is of far better ability than everybody perceives it. So he gets value from the betting odds in that sense. It's kind of set up, if you like. But then again, I suppose that's the perk of being an owner, trainer, and mixing in the right circles. So it's certainly a credible source. I mean, it's well documented in many different places, the amount of money that Barney Curley has taken from horse racing markets throughout history. And I think Nick Townsend does quite a good job of reliving those accounts for the reader. The first time round, they said it never could happen again, and then again he's landed another coup in 2014. So in terms of pros and cons, there's plenty of true stories in there. Like I said, it's entertaining, it's an enjoyable read. You can't fault it for that. Cons, if you push me to find some, it would be that it's a little bit repetitive at points. There's little factual insight in terms of the strategy, which I think is what a lot of readers will be actually searching for in these books. And to be honest, in a £10 book, you're not going to get you know, the golden goose strategy. So I think to go into it expecting that is a little bit unrealistic. It's more of a documentation of what's happened throughout time, but it's certainly an interesting story. It's one of the most popular books out there, so it speaks for itself really. There's a lot of positive reviews on Amazon for that as well. So we'll give that one a 9 out of 10. Like I said, description's in the link below. Check it out for yourself. But that's a good way to pass the time if you're stuck at home at the moment with not a lot to do. The next book we're going to move on to is Gambling for Life, written by Neil Harmon, about Harry Findlay. A lot of people will know about Harry Findlay, or Harry Findlay, however you pronounce it. He's been in the media quite a lot in the past there. You can see the pictures on the back of the book. So you'll see him with a lot of well-known people, and there's a lot of name dropping throughout the book. So he certainly, again, mixes in the right circles, which I think is a large part of Harry's story, to be honest. Now I don't want to ruin it for the reader, so I'm not going to go too deep on some of the things within there, but this is more of a storybook about, again, documentation of how he's, I mean, it even says on the front there, the man who won millions and spent every penny. And you can't fault the man for that. You've got to enjoy your money, right? I mean, there's no point doing it otherwise, is there? But I have a couple of reservations about various things that I've read and seen him say on, in other YouTube clips and stuff before. In terms of strategy, it doesn't seem to quite make sense to me. So I find that a little bit confusing. I think that's reflected in other reviews online and different comments that I've seen. So I don't really understand quite how he made so much money, other than the fact that, again, he was in the right circles with the right people. If I just flick to the centre of the book there, you'll see he's made a lot of money at the Greyhounds tracks early on as well. And again, mixing in the right circles. So I think it's probably more of a product of getting information off of people and then being quite bold with your own judgment, which has led him to make a load of money and, eventually blow a fair amount too, which he's quite open and honest about, which is a very genuine reflection of his character. But in terms of strategy for learning, I would say there's pretty much nothing in this book. This is more of a documentation of what he's done, how he made some money and blown it, but there's no strategy-based information in there, and I couldn't really see any logic behind the choices that he made at times. So I would assume from the things that I've seen in there, also he was on the BBC in the past, there was a documentary about Harry in the past, so I mean there's no question the man has made a lot of money from betting at points. There's no strategy based information which is really going to be of use to you. So if that's why you're buying the book, then that might not be so much of an interest, but it is certainly an interesting story. Roller coaster up and down all over the place, very entertaining and a real character. I've not actually spoken to Harry in the past, although I've been at events and we've spoken at different segments in the same day, and he's certainly, everything that I've seen, having seen him around and hearing him speak, he's definitely one hell of a character. In terms of negatives, if I have to give one, would be that there's a fair amount of name dropping within the book, a little bit repetitive again, and there's just really not any kind of strategy or logic. Even if it was past information, which is of no use anymore, you'd have thought maybe you'd like to reveal that inside the book to make it more interesting for readers. So overall, on the whole, give that one a 7 out of 10. Still worth your time, maybe just less from a strategy angle. Again, link is in the description below. So at this point, I'm going to ask the question, and if you answer it correctly in the comments below, first I'll send these books to you immediately. So who was the trainer that was responsible for the Yellow Sam betting coup? Answer in the comments below now. So finally, the third book, and probably the book that I prefer most out of the three of these, and this is just my personal choice, so that would be Enemy Number 1 by Patrick Veitch. I read this book many moons ago, and I actually read it twice in the end. The second time was trawling it more for trading type information. It says the secrets of the UK's most feared professional punter. Secrets, I know it's a bit of a clickbait, one of those headlines. I wouldn't really say there's any secrets in there, but it's certainly interesting, and he was certainly a feared punter by the bookmakers. So the book is about the story of Patrick Veitch, his highs and lows, and there's been some very different highs and lows for Patrick Veitch in Enemy Number 1 compared to the other two stories, in terms of the fact that he ended up in the witness protection program at one point with people after him because they knew that he was making a lot of money. He successfully ran a tipping line which became extremely popular, drew a lot of attention to him and a lot of negative attention that he didn't really want. So I guess that's a result of actually kind of being open and showing people all of your winnings sometimes, which is not necessarily a good thing. In terms of credibility, I mean, you can't argue with that. The guy ended up in a witness protection program, had a lavish lifestyle, that's well documented, there's plenty of pictures and stuff out there. The bookmakers famously banned him, sort of took him in the back room of one of their shops. There's a story in there about that as well. So he's certainly credible. In terms of learning and strategy, now I found this interesting because there are points throughout this book where you read it and there's subtle hints and there's little things to be learned and gleaned from it. They probably are more outdated now, and I think that really the biggest thing from your man here was the fact that he managed to measure a horse's value in terms of metrics through timing very early on, before it was extremely popular. You see a lot about sectional timing and all that kind of stuff now. He was on that before it was a popular thing and everybody was doing it and everybody was aware of it. So I think that's how he made the majority of his money early on. So that makes for a bit more of an interesting insight in terms of strategy compared to most. Although, you know, if you take it back with Caan's, just to counter that, there is a fair bit of bragging, a little bit of smugness in places, and again, it was repetitive in the sense of I placed this bet and I won, I placed this bet and I won. So, you know, they're the cons, if you like, but the pros being it's a little bit more interesting than normal. Again, there's a huge story attached to it, especially with the witness protection stuff. And when he was in the witness protection program for points, he actually mentions how he relied on information from friends and circles that he was in. So I think that, again, that reinforces a sort of trending theme throughout all three of these books is, you know, being in the right circles, knowing the right people was a large part of the advantage for people, particularly in the 90s, that made a lot of money from gambling. Again, like I said, downside, smugness, ego a little bit in places, but other than that, it's a great book. I found it interesting. I mean, I obviously found it interesting enough because I went back to it for a second time and started to trawl through it to try and understand a little bit behind the psyche of people punting and how they successfully do that in terms of trading. I'll give this one an 8.5 out of 10. So, I mean, it's just slightly less entertaining than The Sure Thing at points, but again, a very good book. A must read. I'd say, to be honest, books 1 and 3, I would certainly be more interested in reading them from a trading perspective and making money. That's not that book 2 is bad at all, because it is a good book. It's just more of a story and an account of somebody's life that has spent a lot of time betting and having a punt. So again, like I say, make sure you answer that question in the comments below. I'll get those into the post soonest to the first person that wins. And check out another video on this channel. There's a betting strategy one up the top here, and there's another one here about how betting odds work. Both useful videos, particularly if you're just coming into betting and trading and want to learn about how betting odds function and be successful in the betting markets.